interesting, I read this one place where it said that the people in Babylon, they made it, they felt like that said the gate of the gods. And they had, you know how in the olden times they would meet at the gate. That was where they would hold their court. And that's what they chose to believe it meant, Babylon meant, because of the interpretation.
Gate of the gods?
Yeah, gate of the gods.
Okay.
That was what they believed it.
That's what they believed.
And the Jews
Okay.
said no, they took the Babel to mean confusion.
The confusion. And that's historically, that's what I have always associated that word with, is confusion. Any other thoughts on that, on the word Babylon? And then is fallen, did you all discuss that a little bit as well? Okay, so fallen,
And it said twice, for emphasis.
okay, so fallen times 2 for emphasis. And do we need to read a lot into that? What does it just literally mean?
It's failed. It means the same way that city fell is the way the latter time Babylon is going to fall to.
So was it literal, and then does it have
Both.
both?
Yeah.
Okay. Does everybody agree with that it has dual meaning?
Yes.
Okay. Any opposition to that interpretation? No. So present and future, or so fallen times 2 for emphasis. I don't think I thought about that. That's a good point, Wanda. All right. So what is our next phrase?
There's another thing, in Revelation 18 and verse 8, speaks of Babylon. And therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judges her.
So do you think those verses tie together, Robert?
Yeah, and it speaks that Babylon in verse 4 there said, come out of her, my people. Not only is that referring to maybe the papacy, but there's so many people that believe those things that they are God's people and that she's come out of it,
Right.
come out of Babylon.
Because we still believe there are people in all Christians in all religions, don't we? And
Yeah.
there is going to
Oh,
be
yeah.
a time when they are called to come out. Right, yeah. And I think sometimes, we need to be careful about that, don't we, as Christians?
Yes.
Tom?
Just received an update on Mark from his brother.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay, please share.
He's apparently fell in the bathroom.
Right.
He's in Johnson City Intensive Care Medical Center there, and but they don't have any update on his treatment.
So, do you mind asking him if he had surgery?
I'll check and see. What
Check and see. I don't think he, for whatever reason, he was
He
able to
must
have.
have it if he's in intensive care.
Yeah, so I'm just not sure. Yeah. So,
And he hadn't had any dialysis since May.
oh wow. So maybe he's going to get dialyzed and then have surgery. We got to really keep praying for him. Yeah, for sure.
Hey,
Okay.
Elaine,
So Pastor's
Elaine,
coming in now.
open the door.
Tell him we held it down for a minute
They
anyway.
don't mind.
All right. We did a quick review. I made three prayer requests. All right, you're welcome. You guys are a fun class.
Thank you, Stacy.
You already had prayer. You already have. All right, here we go. So the last part of Revelation chapter 14, verse 8. What's that last phrase?
Drink, it's made all nations drink of the wine of the Lord.
Okay, so what is the wine of Babylon?
Her beliefs that she's passing.
Okay, how do you know it's false teaching?
Psalm 63.
Psalm 60, verse 3. Right? That's a good verse to go to. False teaching. Psalm 60, verse 3. And so, I think the key word in this last phrase here is made. Right? That means Babylon is not only advocating, encouraging, but also forcing.
Coercion.
Coercion, exactly. Yeah. Any of y'all experienced any of that? Have you had the wine of Babylon forced upon you? Right?
Yeah, evolution in school, for example.
Yeah, good point. Absolutely, yeah. That's an attack on creation, right? That's an attack on the Sabbath.
It says the drink was the acceptance of false teaching. This is drink. It's like Kool-Aid.
So we have a large group of people that have accepted these false teachings. We see that in our society today, right? You know, in the basic teachings of many different denominations, they've kind of bought into this idea of these false teachings. And we've covered some of these false teachings. They're called the abominations, right? Remember last time we went through the list of abominations and what those were? And so we've got this as a list, and some of these, I mean, if you wanted to kind of simplify the list, you could say Sunday sacredness and immortality of the soul. I think you could kind of sum it up in those two, right? Sun worship.
Purgatory is also one.
Absolutely. You could, out of those two, you could break down into idolatry, Sunday sacredness leads to idolatry. You know, what we have in the Catholic Church system, we have a system of graven images. That's why they eliminated the second commandment from their catechism, right? And so we have that kind of connection there. And immortality of the soul, that leads to this idea of purgatory, right? And of course, Protestants don't particularly teach purgatory, but they teach that when you die, you float off to heaven or float off to hell. And so it's really part of the same teaching, isn't it? It all stems from this idea of immortality of the soul. As well as, I mean, I think you could even jump into this idea of once saved, always saved. And when you get into the wicked are burning forever and ever and ever, you know. I mean, all these are these false teachings that stem from these two basic wine of Babylon teachings, right? Immortality of the soul and Sunday sacredness.
You know, one thing I've seemed to notice is they don't ever say they float off to hell. They always go to heaven.
Right.
Yeah.
They always go to heaven. No matter what they've done all their life,
I was just
they're in heaven now. You know?
Yeah. That's right. So, you know, sometimes I get strange requests to do funerals for people I don't know, right? And so one time I got a request from this, you know, got a phone call, and the fellow told me that, well, his dad really kind of believed the way Adventists believed. When I got to the funeral home and did the funeral, almost everybody there was Baptist. Yeah. And so that was an interesting situation to be in, because they don't believe what the Bible teaches about the state of the dead. And so we have this situation about Babylon's teachings have been accepted. But how about people who want to follow the Bible? Now, we've got basically two groups here that is talking about. One group who's accepting it and promotes it, and another group who doesn't want to accept it, but now they're being made to, right? What about the ones who aren't Christians, you know? What about the Muslims, or if you want to go to some of the Asian religions, the Buddhists, what about them? They're also made to accept these type of teachings. And we see the beginnings of this. We don't really see it as like a statement from law or a legal issue or the police come and knock on your door to make sure you follow through with some of these teachings. We don't see that yet, but we see the beginnings of it. Right? We see the beginnings of it. So I think that's the key point in that last phrase, made all nations. And it's a worldwide event. You notice when we looked in Revelation chapter 14, verses 6 and 7, the first angel's message, that's the true message going out. And then Revelation chapter 14, verse 8 is the second angel's message. That's the contrary message, fighting the message that is going out by God's faithful people who believe in the Bible, right? And see the contrast. They're both worldwide movements. You see that? Revelation 14:6, worldwide movement, and the Revelation 14:8, made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath. Okay? And so we have that situation going on even today. Yes, sister?
We see a lot of things because of what's in the news, you know, that affects society, etc. And we now see it in the churches, Christian churches, where they're preaching it from the pulpit. that they need to accept, oh, you know, whatever you think or he thinks or whatever, oh yes, it's all okay. Like, everything's okay, there's nothing that's not okay.
Well, what I find is everything that is okay tends to buy into those fundamental type of two teachings there, especially immortality of the soul, right?
But everything, that it just falls right on through, and it's like, wait a minute, did you read his word?
Right,
And
right.
like follow that, but they just seem to go off on a tangent and never come back.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody who was a Seventh-day Adventist that was dating someone who wasn't, and the person who's not a Seventh-day Adventist said to the person who is, when are we going to go to a normal church? So, you know, the thing about it is, normal is only a setting on the dryer, right? Right? And so here, it's how you define normal. And normal in today's society is Sunday sacredness and immortality of the soul, right?
Should have been a red flag.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would say let's follow not normal but biblical teachings, right? Yeah. Because in reality, the biblical teachings should be the normal teachings, but unfortunately they're not, Lord.
That was one of the things with my dad, was becoming a Christian and studying the Bible. And one of his arguments to my mom was, how can all of these other Christians get it wrong? This can't be right, because you can't have, 90% of the people doing it wrong. And then he realized, well, broad is the gate, narrow is the way. It's like, yeah, I guess the Bible is right, and they're all getting it wrong. But that was a struggle for him at first, because he couldn't quite understand that.
I think it's been a struggle for some people, that's right. Yeah, how could all these other, some of them, they seem so nice and so sincere, but so wrong. That's the problem. And so we got to go by what the Bible says, not right? And I think if we let the Bible speak for itself, that's the safest thing to do. Right? Follow that, and we're in the safe territory. All right. So do you think we've covered Revelation 14:8 okay? Right? Do we want to go forward a little bit?
Yeah.
Mark, thumbs up or thumbs sideways? What do you think? Thumbs up? Okay, gotcha. All right. I know, I'm still grieving with you, brother. I'm just going to let you know.
Thank you for bringing that up.
So now we're in Revelation 14, verse 9. Notice we're going to jump into another angel's message, aren't we? So I want to bring something up about these messages. The first angel's message has a beginning point and goes like this. And the second angel's message has a beginning point and goes. It doesn't mean the first angel's message stops, right? Okay? And it's the same with the third angel's message, and they're all going to continue on until the close of probation. Right? So this ending line over here, I'll call it close of probation. That's when everybody's made their decision, and it's not going to make any sense to do anymore. Right? After that, it's the second last plague. Notice what the third angel's message is in Revelation chapter 14, verse 9. What's the first verse say?
And the third angel followed him, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and his image and receives his mark on his forehead or in his hand. Okay.
So loud, I think it's emphasizing how important the message is, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think you probably see black a little better. Who's the beast?
The devil.
In Revelation 14:9, it says, it mentions beast, right? Who's the beast? Okay, in general, it's a political power, right? Who specifically is the beast in Revelation 14:9? Yes, right. It's the Roman Catholic Church system, right? Or we say papacy. Now, Seventh-day Adventists didn't come up with this. This is traditional Protestant teachings from all different Protestant denominations before 1850, okay? Right? And we did a detailed study of this when we were in Revelation chapter 13, right? and we did the beast. The first beast of Revelation chapter 13 represents the Roman Catholic Church system. And what would you say, if you're going to reiterate or maybe sum up how you would share that? Give me a characteristic out of Revelation chapter 13 that kind of goes along with why you say this. Okay, so what, if you notice in Revelation, well, I'll go, let's see here. Chapter 13 and verse 5, right? It says 42, this is a time prophecy of 42 months, right? So what does that 42 months equal in reality?
3.5 years.
What's that? 1,260 years, right?
Time times.
Yeah. You remember how this particular time period is given to us 7 different times in the Bible. In the books of Daniel and the book of Revelation, it's given us times and a half a time, or 1,260 days, or 42 months. You know, how do we get 1,260 out of this? 30 days in a Jewish month, right? We multiply that, we get the 1,260 days. And then we apply Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 6, which says a day equals a year, a day in prophecy equals a literal year, and that's how we get the 1,260 years. So we see this connected to the papacy, starting there in Daniel chapter 7. Right? What is the symbol of the papacy in Daniel chapter 7? Not all at once. Yes, little horn. And it says in verse 25 that the little horn has a time period associated with it called times and a half a time. Right? That same time period shows up again in Revelation chapter 12, and it's interpreted in Revelation chapter 12 as 1,260 days. That's verse 14, then verse 6, right? Revelation chapter 12, verse 14, then Revelation chapter 12, verse 6. We connect times and a half a time to 1,260 days. We apply Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 6 again to that, and we get 1,260 years. You said deadly wound was healed. When was the deadly wound inflicted? 1798 was when it was inflicted, right? All right, we subtract the 1,260 and we get the year 538. This is that time period the Bible said that the papacy would have political power and influence the kings, especially the kings in Europe, right? Why do we pick 538?
That's when the Pope actually took position in Rome.
So, whenever the Bishop of Rome sat in the throne in Rome and was then known as the Pope, which means Papa, right? We only supposed to call God Abba, which means Papa, right? Only God, the Father's called that, right? And so he takes on that title in 538 AD, and in 1798, Berthier, the French general, captures the Pope and strips him of his political power. And it looks like the papacy is going to die a political death, right? But you said the deadly wound would be healed. And so what started this process of the deadly wound being healed? What's a
1929.
1929? What happened in 1929?
Mussolini gave him back his power.
We have the Lateran Treaty, and the Lateran Treaty took place between Mussolini and his government, who controlled Italy at the time, and the Roman Catholic Church system, or the papacy. And what did it do?
Donated
It
the land.
created the Vatican.
Created the Vatican.
Yeah, they became their own country. 108.7 acres in the center of Rome. How many of you has visited the Vatican? We have quite a few. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. And so, 1929, the deadly wound is in the process of starting the healing, right? Yeah, it takes place over a long period of time. When was the Pope accepted in the United States? here right after the Kennedys, right?
Yeah.
About 1965. And then we had the, I was talking to Bill's dad, and he was telling me about how that's when the papacy allowed, because Bill's dad was at one time a Catholic, and came to know the truth from the Bible and became a Seventh-day Adventist, and then he was a Seventh-day Adventist minister and wanted to share the truth with other people. That's what happens when you've kind of lived in a lie for a while, and you're like, whoa, your eyes are wide open, and you see the truth, the light comes in, you want to share with others. So that's what he did, but he was telling me how that's when also the papacy said, it's okay for you guys to read the Bible now. Right? But go through the catechism. Okay, so we see that the day that when we started the healing process here, and we see it then starting to be accepted here in the United States after we had JFK being elected as president, the first Catholic president in the United States. Now, what happened in 2000, can't remember the date now, 15, somewhere through there, the Pope came and spoke to a joint session of Congress. The first time a religious leader ever in the history of the United States spoke to a joint session of Congress was when the Pope came and addressed them just a few years ago. So you can see, and I can't remember the exact date, I think it was 2015, I don't remember for sure. In Congress, right. I went through and looked at every joint session of Congress to see who addressed them. He was the very first the religious leader to ever do that. The Pope addressed the joint session of Congress.
What did he say?
Well, he was very general about loving people and accepting people, and he really didn't. I thought he was going to maybe even, what would have been good if he would have maybe talked a little more about some of the issues that Christians deal with, but he didn't say a whole lot of substance at the time. It was more of acceptance by the United States government of his ideology, right? That's what he's promoting, brother.
Yeah, when I was doing studying Bill's dad there, he was talking about the environment's gonna be a good thing during the time, like the day of rest.
Yeah, we have this idea of a day of rest being promoted from different groups, don't we? Yeah.
I don't know if they joint Congress there, if we talked about that or not.
And you can go back and watch it on YouTube and see what's in the details. Brother?
She talked about climate change, immigration, and social justice.
Oh.
September 24, 2015. You got the right date.
Oh, I got the right date. Excellent. Thank you for looking it up, brother. Thank you. Brother?
The Pope did tell the Congress that only him and his priest could forgive sins.
Yeah.
He did say that.
He said what?
Only, Robert said the Pope stated that only he and his priest could forgive sins.
Oh,
Stated in Congress.
Wow.
Pastor, is that the
That's a
same
bold
year?
statement.
Is that the same year that Dr. Ben Carson spoke at the congressional prayer meeting in 2015?
I don't remember when he spoke there.
Because his speeches were really, that's good. Seems like it'd be a good.
Maybe it was the same year. I don't remember for sure. That's a good point. Right. Yeah. So you can see the acceptance of the Pope, the deadly wound has practically been healed, right? I mean, just Google this. Google the Pope and political leaders, and just do images. And look at all the different political leaders that want to meet with the Pope. Putin with Russia, and just go through the whole list there. You can see pictures of them with the Pope. They all want to meet with the Pope. And then Google this. Google religious leaders in the Pope. Google Muslim leaders in the Pope. Google Asian or Buddhist leaders of the Pope. They all want to meet with the Pope. And they'll even go to the Vatican to meet with him. And so...
Even our Adventist president met with the Pope.
So we have different leaders, both political and religious, that are meeting with the Pope because they recognize the amount of influence or power he has over people.
When did they send the England ambassador there the first time? When did they give him an ambassador?
Well, I think it was Reagan in 1982, but you may want to check that as well, right? Not clear on that. She was asking, when did the United States send an ambassador to the papacy? And I think it was Reagan in 1982, but I think you ought to check it to make sure, right? And if you notice, you remember how that famous Times magazine front cover had Reagan and the Pope bringing down communism? You remember that, you know, working together? Just like Revelation chapter 13 said that the beast of Revelation 13 and the beast that comes out of the land are going to work together at the end of time. I mean, it's almost like prophecy becoming true before our very eyes by looking at the cover of that magazine. We're in the last days. That's the thing, you know. We are there. We're in the last days. Okay, so that's a good point you brought up about daily women being healed. I think there's a lot of different things that we can bring up here without rehashing the whole study of Revelation chapter 13. You could go back and watch it, right? As one of our YouTube Sabbath school classes. And see if you got any questions about that. So notice it said the beast, and we're back to Revelation 14 verse 9 now. Will you reread that verse again?
And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and his image and receives his mark on his forehead or in his hand.
Okay, so we got the beast, it represents the papacy. What is the mark?
Sunday worship. Sunday law.
Okay, Sunday
Sacredness.
sacredness. Sacredness, okay. Sunday sacredness. That's the mark of her ecclesiastical authority. Those are the words of the papacy, right? The mark of her ecclesiastical authority.
And it's quite a picture when you see the president of your country bow
Yeah,
and kiss the ring of the Pope.
yeah, that's what that is.
That was like,
Yeah. Yeah, which president?
that was Reagan. Reagan? No. But I remember, I watched, I can't think who it was now.
So it's been a while, that's the
Yeah.
thing. So the thing about it too, whenever we had the funeral for the Pope, you remember all the former United States presidents and at the time kneeling down before the Pope. I know that was disturbing to see that picture, right? It's Revelation chapter 13 coming true before our very eyes. So we have the papacy and her mark of ecclesiastical authority. So if you're doing this idea of the mark of the beast and you're sharing that with somebody, it's kind of a shock for somebody who attends a Sunday keeping church that the mark of the beast is Sunday sacredness. So they're going to ask, the first question is, you mean to tell me I have the mark of the beast? Right? Isn't that the first one?
And they're upset.
And they're upset, right? What do you mean? I have the mark of the beast? No, you don't have the mark of the beast. Because it said back in Revelation chapter 14 verse 8, there's going to be a law passed, it's going to be a legal issue, they're going to be forced ultimately whenever this type of national Sunday law is passed and trying to force people to keep Sunday sacred, that is when the mark of the beast is being applied. We don't have that yet, do we? So we're in the warning phase. That's why God raised us up as Seventh-day Adventists, is to warn people so they won't receive the mark of the beast.
It was Kennedy.
It was Kennedy.
Yes.
Okay.
Kennedy.
Well, that's easy to understand.
Yeah, because he was a Catholic. Right? Yeah.
But still, you always expect your government to be more neutral, but
Yeah.
to flood over there to bow to the Pope, And of course, when we've had popes that have passed, the leaders of every country have gone.
Yeah, right.
It's as though he's like the leader of the world instead of just his little church.
That's exactly right. That's what the Bible predicts would happen.
Right.
And so, whenever Ulysses S. Grant became president, right, he ultimately traveled in Europe and met with the Pope. And the Pope told him that he was disappointed, and one of the things that he pushed as president was religious freedom. So, I thought that was interesting, brother.
I was just going to say that the kissing of the ring with the Pope is the softball in the older days. I've seen pictures of this because I was in a different church. he made his bishops of other, the Orthodox Church, kiss the top of his slippers. He had a cross.
Oh,
He had a cross
really?
down on the feet. Show
Wow.
humility.
Wow.
Wow, that's crazy, isn't it?
Should have found that.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the only person that deserves some type of treatment like that is Jesus. That's the only one, right? And so, that's crazy. Okay. So, in sharing the Mark of the Beast, what I like to do, and I think we've gone through this in detail, and you can do this in 15 minutes. You can share the Mark of the Beast in a very unoffensive way, I think. But I like to contrast Revelation 14:12 with Revelation chapter 13. When you contrast the two, you read the verses in Revelation 13 about the Mark of the Beast. There are 3 verbs associated with it: worship, buying, and selling. And then when I look at Revelation 14 verse 12, we'll do this again when we cover that verse, if you'll remind me. Okay. We will, when we contrast the two, I look at what part of the ones who don't receive the mark of the beast, Revelation 14:12, what are they doing that deals with worship, buying, and selling? And it says they're keeping all the commandments. I look at all the commandments and say, which one of these deals with worship, buying, and selling? And the Sabbath is the only one. So that's how I know the mark of the beast is an attack on the Sabbath. Right? When you put those two together. All right.
Again?
Yes?
Can you say that again?
Yes.
Sorry.
We'll go through it in detail. We'll do the study again, but essentially I'm contrasting Revelation 14:12, the people who do not receive the mark of the beast, with Revelation 14:9-11, the people who do receive the mark of the beast. Right? And so what I do is I go back to Revelation chapter 13, and I read the verses about the mark of the beast, and out of those verses I get 3 verbs: worship, buying, and selling. So then I take worship, buying, and selling, and I compare it with what the people who don't receive the mark of the beast are doing. Right? And I notice that they're keeping the commandments of God. So I look at the commandments of God and say, which one of those deals with worship, buying, and selling? And the only one that does is the Sabbath. So that's how I know the mark of the beast is an attack on the Sabbath. Okay? When you compare the two together. So, tell me, what's the mark of God?
Sabbath.
Okay, give me a verse.
A verse? Or a verse? Exodus 20.
That tells me the mark of God is the Sabbath. Right here. Give me a verse, I'll write it up there.
Says it'll be the sign between you and me.
Okay, I like it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know where.
Yeah. No, you know where it's at.
Yes,
Where's it at, Sean? No?
Exodus.
No?
No, Ezekiel.
How did you guys know?
Oh man, it just came.
What's this? No, let's check it and see. Okay? So in Ezekiel 20, verse 12 and 20, it uses the word sign. And I'm equating the word sign with the word mark. And I think we can do that biblically. If you give me a chance, I'll do that. Somebody read Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 12 and 20.
Moreover, also I gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am the Lord that sanctify them.
Okay.
And hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am the Lord your God.
Okay. So I notice it's called a sign here, but I don't think there's a huge difference between being a mark or a sign of God's authority, right? Okay, so I'm trying to apply it. Notice this. People are sealed with the mark of the beast, and they're lost. People are sealed with the mark of God, and they're saved. Okay, here at the end of time. So notice how the word seal and the word sign are equated together in Romans chapter 4, verse 11. Romans chapter 4, verse 11. If somebody wants to read that verse for us. Romans 4:11. What I'm trying to show is that the word sign and seal can be used interchangeably in the Bible, as well as the word mark. Because you're sealed with the mark of the beast, you're sealed with the mark of God. What does it say there in Romans 4:7? It's like you got.
And he sealed the sign of circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the faith, which he had while still uncircumcised, that he might be the father of all those who believe, though they are uncircumcised, that righteousness might be imputed to them also.
So he uses the word sign, and then he uses the word seal. We talked about the same concept, okay? So I'll put those two together, brother.
I have a question. We went to Ezekiel 12 to 12. And
12?
Yeah.
20 verse 12?
I'm talking about the Sabbaths,
Yes.
plural.
Okay.
And Apostle Paul, when he talks about, or is it Acts? We don't-
Colossians.
That we don't care about the new moons and Sabbaths.
Yeah.
And after this, we say, it doesn't talk about this Sabbath, it talks about the other celebrations. But here,
Right.
Ezekiel says the Sabbath is a sign.
Yeah. And notice, he's talking about the seventh day Sabbath in Ezekiel chapter 20. But in Colossians chapter 2, let's go there. Colossians chapter 2. And start there in verse 14 and go to 16 and see if this is not the passage you're talking about. Colossians chapter 2.
14, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. And having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. To what verse?
16.
Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of an holy day, or of the new moon or of the Sabbath day.
No, it doesn't say Sabbath day in my Bible.
But we have, well, in mine it just says Sabbath, but I have written here a notation ceremonial.
True. So you have the word Sabbath, right, in Colossians 2, verse 16.
Yeah.
Is that the verse you're talking
Yes,
about?
yes.
Okay. So notice which Sabbath it's talking about. It tells you in verse 17.
Yeah, it's a small s.
Which are a shadow of things to come. What are a shadow of things to come? Look in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 1. What is a shadow of things to come? Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 1. What's
For
it
the
say?
law, having a shadow of the good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with these same sacrifices, which they offer continually year by year, make those who approach perfect.
Right. So you can see a shadow of things to come was the ceremonial law. So when it talks about Sabbaths there, let's go to Leviticus chapter 23. Leviticus chapter 23. Okay? Notice the Bible differentiates between the weekly Sabbath and the ceremonial Sabbath. We know the context of Colossians 2, verse 16 and 17 is the ceremonial Sabbath because it tells us that in verse 17, right? And we went to Hebrews 10:1 to confirm it, a shadow of things to come, okay? So notice in Leviticus chapter 23, the Bible differentiates between the ceremonial Sabbaths and the weekly Sabbath. Notice it says in verse 4 of Leviticus chapter 20, these are the feasts of the Lord, holy convocations. That is a ceremonial Sabbath, which you shall proclaim of their appointed times in the 14th day of the first month at twilight is the Lord's Passover. And he goes and he talks about this. So you see in verse 7, on the first day you shall have a holy convocation, you shall do no customarily work. Right? These are annual Sabbaths. Okay? Notice in verse 37, he goes through and he mentions all of these different feasts that take place throughout the year and equates an annual Sabbath with some of these feasts. But notice in verse 37, these are the feasts of the Lord which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Okay, that is a little s Sabbath. You mentioned they don't capitalize the s in Colossians 2:16. To be holy convocations, to offer an offering made by fire to the Lord. So this is a ceremonial Sabbath, a burnt offering and a grain offering, sacrifice and drink offerings, everything on that on his day, on this day. So this is a annual Sabbath dealing with the ceremonial law. But notice verse 38. Do this besides the Sabbaths of the Lord. The Sabbaths of the Lord are called, that's the weekly Sabbath.
Larger.
And notice, in my version of the Bible, it capitalizes that Sabbath. So when it's talking about a ceremonial Sabbath, it uses the small s. And here, when it's talking about the weekly Sabbath, it uses a large S or capital S. And notice in Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 12, the New King James Version differentiates between the weekly Sabbath and the ceremonial Sabbath, and it acknowledges here in 20 verse 12 of Ezekiel that it's a capital S Sabbath, meaning it's a weekly Sabbath, not a ceremonial Sabbath. Does that make sense to everybody? Did I lose anybody? Ask questions, it's okay. Don't be shy. And then in verse 20. Does that make sense? We okay?
Yeah.
Okay. It differentiates between the two.
So, also when you read it talks about the ordinances that was against us, the handwriting of ordinances that was against us.
Right.
Ordinances is a different word than commandments.
Right.
So it's not the commandments, it's not the law of God. It's a different word, it's a totally different meaning. So it's not the commandments that were nailed to the cross, it was the ordinances, which is a completely different word.
Yeah. If you're talking to a Baptist or many other denominations, Protestant, proclaiming Protestant denominations, they'll say, they'll bring up Colossians 2:14 and say it's the Ten Commandments. Then you'll say, yeah, it's okay to kill, it's okay to commit adultery, it's okay to steal, it's okay to... No. Those are still valid. Oh, you're saying it's only the weekly Sabbath that was nailed to the cross, right? Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what they narrow it down to that, right? There's nothing in the Ten Commandments that's against us. It's all for us. Do you want to live in a society that says it's okay to kill, steal, and all that? No. Right? It's a blessing to live in a society that says that's against the law and we're going to prevent it from happening. Right? Okay, brother?
Well, I had a question to one of my friends, and the question was, if you die and go straight to heaven, then why not do that? So, thou shalt not kill. I said, so now we're on the Sabbath, right? Because they'll use. He went straight to Ten Commandments on the reason not to do that, and then it segued into Sabbath.
Right. So
there wasn't there wasn't an answer on that one.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow what you're saying there. You're
So
saying that he was
I was
supporting.
trying to pin him down on the state of the.
Oh
dead.
yeah, you said that.
So
to
I
him.
said,
Right.
I said it on purpose.
Gotcha,
I said,
gotcha.
hey, why don't you go straight to heaven? That would be better than what
Yeah.
we got right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, well, no, we can't do that because thou shalt not, murder or kill.
Yeah.
I said, cool. What about the fourth commandment?
And then there was no
and
response.
then it was like,
exactly. Good point. That's a
which
good point.
it really hit both. State of the dead.
That's exactly right.
Sabbath.
That's exactly
And then it just kind of fizzled because I'm sure he thought about it.
Yeah.
That's all you can do is plant seeds.
Yeah, that's true. And sometimes we got to chew on things a while, right?
He did it. It was like checkmate because it was like where do we go with this? Because it was more of a any day's the Sabbath. We can take it. It's like it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Except it's a big deal on some things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point.
But it's kind of confusing because when my dad passed, and the primitive Baptists, of course, preached at the funeral, they said he's having the best rest right now, and the Lord will come gather him.
Yeah.
But then they'll say,
Yeah,
pretty much
they
the whole,
contradict themselves.
yeah,
Right.
almost the whole funeral was,
Almost every funeral's that way.
yeah, and they didn't
Preach
even.
them up, preach them down.
Yeah,
They didn't really even, it did, that's exactly, but they never really mentioned him being up there. They just said, the Lord's gonna come get him, and I was like, wow, this is all in line with what I do too.
Yeah,
You know,
that was
so-
pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's neat.
That's right. You know, there's God's people in all different denominations.
Yes.
That's why God has called us as Seventh-day Adventists to share the three angels' message and then call people out of Babylon, which is religious confusion, right? You'd say it's religious confusion. We're calling them out of Babylon back to the Bible so they can be saved here at the end of time. That's what God's called us to do. That's the purpose of our denomination, is to do that. Okay, so I think we're okay with this. It's the mark of God, it's the Sabbath, the mark of the beast is Sunday Savior, right? So let's go back to Revelation 14:9. Let's see if we're okay with, say we covered the whole verse this Sabbath. Okay, let's see if we can say that. Right? Let's read it one more time. We got who the beast is. We got who the mark of the beast is. Does it say that?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to read it for us again?
And the third angel followed and sang with a loud voice. If
Okay.
anyone worships
Who's this third angel? Who's this third angel?
Well, it's not the first or the second.
different angels,
Are you,
Did I walk into that one?
are you saying he has a name? Is it
Does he have a name?
Gabriel?
Absolutely. Yeah, he's got a name.
You think it's Gabriel?
Or Michael?
Those are the only two angels.
Okay, you want me to tell you the name of the first angel, the name of the second angel, and the name of the third angel?
You just did.
Yeah, here it is. All right? It's Beatrice. It's Wanda.
Oh.
It's Bill. It's Gina.
So it's
It's,
us.
yeah, it is us. It's symbolic, because what does the word angel literally mean?
Messenger.
Right. What did Jesus call John the Baptist? Angelos. And what is the Greek word used here in Revelation 14? Angelos. The exact same word. It means messenger. Now, in Revelation 14 verse 6, does it say that the angel was proclaiming the everlasting gospel? Does it say that in Revelation 14:6?
But it's flying.
Okay, that means it's going quickly, right? So what does it say in Revelation 14:6? What is that angel saying?
Preach to those who dwell on the earth.
Okay, so this angel's preaching what?
Fear God and give glory to Him.
The everlasting gospel. Show me in the Bible where God gave the everlasting gospel to a literal angel to preach.
It isn't there?
He didn't, because he gave it to his people.
Look in Mark chapter 16. Jesus getting ready to ascend to heaven. Right? That's a pretty major event about to happen.
Go ye unto all the earth, preach the gospel.
And it says in verse 14, I'm in Mark 16, verse 14, later he appeared to the 11 as they sat at the table, and he rebuked their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they did not believe those who had seen him after he had risen. And he said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel. Right? Who did he give this to?
Us.
To his followers. He did not give it to literal angels. So the first, second, and third angel you see there in Revelation chapter 14 is just symbolic, representing the message that we, as God's people at the end of time, will be proclaiming to the world and helping them get ready for the second coming. You are the first, second, and third angel.
That's scary.
Are you ready? This is the message you're supposed to be telling people. The everlasting gospel. Start with that, right?
And it's time.
And it's time to do it.
It's time.
This is the message.
What do we do with verse 18, and they will take up serpents?
Okay. Now, are you taking it literally?
I don't know, it's a question.
Okay, did Paul get bit by a serpent?
Yes.
Did he swell up and die?
No.
That's what it's saying is, when you're proclaiming the gospel, like Paul was doing, will God miraculously protect you?
Yes.
Absolutely.
My brother fell down in church.
Yeah.
Arm swelled up real big. They prayed over him, and they recovered. Rattlesnake.
Rattlesnake, I don't want that to happen to me. Right? That's radical. I remember when Mark Finley, when he was doing It Is Written, right? You know, he'd go to these different sites and, you know, in Ephesus or some of these ruins, and he's over there, you know, and they're filming him. Well, he jumped into a place that was basically a snake pit one time. And none of the snakes bit him. So, I mean, I think it's talking about that God will miraculously help you proclaim the message that He's given us to proclaim. Right? I mean, we can do that. And He will protect us. That's true. I can also see it from a spiritual standpoint. We have, the devil is called the serpent of old, right? From the Garden of Eden. I think his demons are also the serpents, so they're following him as well. And he'll protect us from this demonic influence as well. But the demons they want to keep us from proclaiming this message. Right? So, I'm looking at the three angels of Revelation 14. Wow! This is awesome. Right? And you've been given a message to proclaim to the world. I think we ought to be faithful. Don't you? All right. So, next time we're going to pick this back up, and we'll see if we can finish Revelation chapter 14 and verse 9 in the next Sabbath school. Okay? Now, today, if you notice your bulletins, you should have something about religious liberty. Okay. Right? You have something in there about it? So, what happened last, the 11th, we was a snow day. We didn't have church, and that was supposed to be a religious liberty offering. So, what I'm thinking about doing is making us one of the Sabbaths in February after Valentine's. You can't mess up. You got to do it after that, right? I'm thinking the fourth Sabbath in February of making it maybe religious liberty. So, we can give religious liberty offerings from the 11th up to March, and it will go into the right hand so we can distribute Religious Liberty magazine to people in our government, and these local governments, state governments, federal government, as well as judges, politicians. We're trying to get the message to them about stay away from people's right to worship God according to their own conscience. That's the purpose, right? What we're doing is we're